Uh, I think you have got, I mean, there's a lot of mix of people here who already are into Sunbird development, and probably few of them who are looking at it for the first time. So that's a bit of a challenge. Let me see how fast I can, give a broad overview of, what we are talking about as building blocks in Sunbird, right? Have any of you played with the Lego? Lego blocks, right? So essentially you can imagine, what we have in Sunbird is very similar to that, where you can create different shapes, different pictures, different, it's up to your imagination, right? That's pretty much what, Sunbird has. And why is it important or essential is that is what will allow, building so many different solutions from the same set, right? So that's the essential of the building blocks, where you can take the individual pieces and build your platform, your solution at your scale, right? So that's pretty much what the philosophy of having building blocks as the fundamental things within the Sunbird. It's not a monolithic thing where it has only one solution, it's only applicable in one area, but it's up to your imagination and your problem, which you can build for, right? This picture I think you have seen in couple of presentations in the morning also. So in this session, basically we'll get little bit deep into each of this, what it is, and what does it do. Like as the fundamental principles of building blocks are, each one has a very well-defined set of functionality with a set of interfaces that it exposes for interacting with other building blocks, right? So this gives the kind of overview of most of the building blocks which are there in Sunbird. Some of the building blocks are small Lego pieces. Some of them are little bit larger pieces which assemble other, smaller pieces. That's how we have different types of building blocks in Sunbird. I think we will get into certain set of these which are very fundamental to what we are calling as Sunbird Ed. Sunbird Ed is basically the block which is like a combination of several other building blocks ready to deploy solution for certain problems, right? So that is what you have Sunbird Ed, which is there on the top, which is basically you take the Sunbird Ed, you do certain configurations and deploy it for your domain, a solution that you're looking at, right? It could be a learning platform for education. It could be a learning platform in the domain of agriculture. Like for example, you want to have certain learning materials for farmers of how to grow crops, right? Or it could be in any other sector, for example, healthcare, or, it's up to your imagination, right? So that's the building block which essentially gives you a package of certain functionalities and features. We'll get into a little bit more into that. And the other building blocks that you see are kind of smaller pieces, right? Which gives a very, very specific functionality by itself, right? We'll go, it's obviously not feasible to data of, let's say, user interactions, right? User has clicked something in your app, or user has loaded certain things from the platform. How does the platform know about this, right? So that to capture all those kind of events and data, the telemetry is the specification. And on top of telemetry, we have the observe building block, which essentially has a way of processing that data that you get from this telemetry data, right? Telemetry gives the specification. You implement your specification in your applications and emit data, right? And observe is the building block, which essentially gives you the features of how you can process that huge volumes of data, right? We'll get into a few of these in the subsequent slides. I'm just giving a flavor of this. And what Sunbird Ed does is it packages all these building blocks, the code and the services, and gives you as one single package that you can deploy. Okay. So just from a different perspective of what are the capabilities that Sunbird Ed provides, right? We are kind of zooming in a little bit onto the Sunbird Ed, right? And the related building blocks. So these are some of the capabilities that the Sunbird Ed provides. It has a certain front-end reference solutions as applications, which is like a mobile app, a portal app, and also a desktop app, right? Which allows the end users to interact, right? So those are the end user reference apps, and which provide a lot of different capabilities, like your managing your content, organizing your content, the consumption of the content in multiple languages, QR scanning. I hope a lot of you books which are very core and important for the Sunbird Ed functionality. One of it is the Sunbird knowledge. Okay, that is one of the core building blocks, which is for managing digital assets, right? Organize them and consume them, right? So here we have, the knowledge building block provides several types of assets, including different formats like documents, videos, and even AR, VR kind of a content. So different formats, different purposes, you can create content. It basically has the whole management system, right? You can define what type of content you want to create, and then have APIs to create that content, modify the content, delete the content. And you can also organize the content into various collections, right? For example, in the case of education, maybe you want to group the content based on textbooks, right? So that's one way of organizing the content, right? For some other use case, you might want to organize the content completely different way, right? So it provides the different ways of doing that. And then ultimately, how you can discover it easily, right? You can tag the content in using various attributes, and then discover the content. So the whole management of digital assets is what the knowledge provides. And it's primarily targeted towards knowledge assets. And that's why, the name Sunbird Knowledge. Yeah. So every Sunbird building block typically has two types of components. One is a service, which is basically exposed a set of functionalities through APIs, right? That's a typical microservice architecture, right? So every Sunbird building block typically has a set of microservices which provide you certain functionality, and some of the building blocks also have UI components, which are reusable UI components, right? So this is broadly the two types of components that you see in any Sunbird building block. For knowledge, the microservices are again based on the functionality, like you have content and collection microservices. You have media services, which basically allows you to manage the media content. Then you have a tagging and taxonomy service. This is for basically how you can define different attributes, different categories of how do you classify the content for better search and discoverability, right? For example, I can say, like, if I want to get content, let's say I want to look at teacher resources for my, as a teacher, I want to look at teacher resources for class 7 mathematics, right? How do you do that? So when you're building a system for education, you can tag your assets saying that this asset is for this purpose and for this kind of a audience, right? And this allows that kind of a tagging and then searching the assets based on that. Right? And then asset service you to search, whereas taxonomy and tagging allows you to define the various ways of tagging the content and tagging the content. And last but not least, dial service. That's a very unique, I can say, is a service, which is what is basically for giving a easy discoverability of how you connect physical resources to a digital resource, right? Let's say I have a lab, in your laboratory, let's say you have certain devices, right? When a student goes to the lab, and if he or she wants to know how to use the device, right? How do they know? What you can do is, you can actually connect that physical device to certain content, like, let's say, how to use the device as a video, right? A learning content, right? And you can generate a dial code, which is unique to that device, and then also create a QR code image out of that dial code and stick it on the device, right? You scan it, you scan the QR code, then you can get the relevant content in terms of how you use the device, you can show up, right? This is one kind of use case where you can connect your physical assets to a digital asset, right? So these are the main components of knowledge. Similar to knowledge assets, which are more for the purpose of learning and teaching, inquiry is the building block which gives support of creating questions, right? And questions can be anywhere, right? It could be, for example, the government of India wants to launch a survey for users in terms of, how certain improvements have to be done in some sector, right? A survey is a set of questions, right? Or it could be something like a national quiz on constitution, right? Where you have a set of questions on constitution and users can answer that, right? So questions are everywhere. It can be used in different forms. So inquiry gives the capability of creating a large set of question banks, and how you create questions out of it, and then how do you get answers for the questions and then evaluate those answers. That whole capability is given by the inquiry. And again, as I said, like, typically it has two types of components, a microservice and a UI. It provides the microservice for creating and publishing questions. And then there is a editor and a player to create those questions, right? Which you can either, so when you are building a solution using Sunbird building blocks, for example, Sunbird inquiry, it's up to your choice. You can either say, I'll just use the microservice to manage my questions as backend, and I develop my own UI, right? That's up to you as a solution creator, right? Or I see that these editors and players are very good for me. I'll just take and plug it into my application. That's your choice. Right? So that's the kind of the ability the building blocks give because of the componentization. Right? Another important building block is Sunbird Learn, which essentially captures a way of, see, learning is all about interactions, right? You either interact with an application using certain content, or you interact with your peers by doing certain discussions and things like that. So learning is an immersive and interactive experience. So learn as a building block provides certain capabilities to enable that, right? So one of the capabilities is managing the users. As a user, who am I? What is my profile? And if I'm doing certain learning journeys, capturing that as part of my profile, all that is enabled by the user management. Then you have what we call as batch management, which is basically you can create structured learning journeys, right? Where I say I stitch in certain set of learning materials and give it as a learning journey, as a course or a training, right? For users to do, right? So that gives the users a way of tracking their progress in terms of how much they have learned, right? Both the user as well as the system knows like how the users are progressing in their learning journeys. And you can also associate, certificates, which are verifiable digital certificates once user completes that learning journey, right? And then it gives other interactive engagement capabilities like, you can form groups and do some kind of group assignments, right? For example, a teacher can create a group for all the students of their class, right? And then assign certain activities to do, right? So those kind of capabilities is what, groups and then discussion forums to do the discussions give. And also it has notifications capabilities of how you, notify users of certain events and things like that. Yeah, and like what we discussed, each of the functionalities are captured as set of different services. User and org service, batch, groups, notification, and also data products where, as I described, it's all about user data, right? So how do you capture the learning journey information for each user, right? Where they are and things like that. So that's the data products component which helps you generate that, data. Observe, I think I've touched upon earlier, where it gives the capabilities of, enabling processing of huge volumes of data. You can scale, up to like what in the morning you have seen the numbers of users. You can imagine how many number of events that are generated out of that, right? Every day it is in millions of events are generated every day, right? So how do you process that as a way of checking the data accuracy, deduplication, and then how you can plug in your own data products to generate some specific insights, right? So that's what the Observe as a data as a building block provides. So it has a data pipeline which basically enables processing the data as a pipeline, and you can plug in your data products into the pipeline in the process flow. And another building block is Sunbird Cocreate. This is, again, it's a very interesting and one of the key components of Sunbird Ed, where if the organizations, let's say they are creating an app, a learning platform system, right? Platform or a system, and if it's a large scale system, right? Often organizations have difficulties in creating the learning assets for their needs, right? Everything may not be created in-house, right? For example, let's say Government of India wants to create a certain learning content for doctors, right? Or, I mean, we can take a very specific case, for example, in we all went through, right? Like in COVID scenario, where there are warriors of COVID, and you had to create certain training materials for them, right? Who can create, how to create them, right? So for that, Cocreate is a component which is a building block which provides different ways of how you can crowdsource content from various people or organizations, right? So it has a very specific capability of defining those workflow in terms of from where you want to source the content for your needs. You can define these are my requirements and publish it to either public, like a crowdsourcing. Anyone can register and say that, yeah, I can give the content for you, right? Then it can go through certain curation process, and finally they can contribute the content for the requirements. So this gives the whole, it's a building block where you can develop solutions on top of it for that. Yeah, so till now we have seen the underlying building blocks that the Sunbird Ed uses. Sunbird Ed by itself, what does it do, right? It collates all these different building blocks, which are primarily backend services like what we have seen. And of course, there are certain pluggable UI components in the front end. What Ed does is it packages them, and then on top of it, it has certain reference apps, which actually provide the experience for the end users, right? It has a mobile app, it has a web app, and it also has a desktop app, right? And mobile app and desktop app provide both online and offline features, which means that whatever the consumption experience is there for the content, it can be done online, as well as you can consume the assets offline also, right? And they also have support for multilingual UI for many of the Indian languages. So these are again reference apps where they for your own solution, right? It's not one app, one solution, but these are reference apps which anyone can take and either apply certain configurations for their domain-specific solution, or they might tweak those applications to create their own experiences. So that's what the Sunbird Ed, apart from the other building blocks, provide. So this is like trying to, I don't know how much time that I took, but this is like showing the big sea in one cup of water. So but I hope you got the a broader overview of what are all the things that are there as part of Sunbird building blocks. I'm sure some of you might already be working in some of the building blocks, but not the other ones. So now I hope you have got a broader understanding of it. So what we'll do is What do you think is the most difficult part of developing a product? There's no right or wrong answer, but I just want to. Implementation, okay. Requirements, okay. No one from QA? Okay. Testing. I think the most difficult thing is none of this. It is before starting the SDLC, which is basically coming up with the problem statement, right? Once you have that, the rest is taken care by ChatGPT. So, I mean, imagining the problems which something can be solved with is the most difficult thing. So, what we request is for all of you to just think for 5-6 minutes in terms of what are all just be crazy, okay? For example, you can think what Sunbird can do. Try to think of the problems or the scenarios that Sunbird, such a situation, can Sunbird do something for creating some systems for them, right? Just have your thoughts float around and jot down. So what we'll do is we'll get those thoughts and then probably have some what we call as jugalbandi, where few of them we can take up and then see how probably that can be, created using some of these Sunbird building blocks. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.